All right, today is December 12th, and this is our year-end interview with Premier Scott Moe, talking about all the energy issues going on in Saskatchewan. So, Premier, we've been doing this for a few years now. The largest threat to Saskatchewan's energy sector right now is President-elect Trump's threat of applying a 25% tariff on all Canadian exports, presumably including oil. What has your staff told you about what the implications would be on this?
Severe, significant, not only in the oil industry, but across the board in Saskatchewan and Canada. And I'd say the largest threat, although it may manifest itself in an American tariff on Saskatchewan and Canadian goods, the even larger threat is how our federal government handles and manages the relationship with the incoming Trump administration. And so I would just come out and say, first thing, the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, has likely the most significant majority mandate that I've seen in recent history. Whether it be with President-elect Trump coming into the White House, whether it be with the Republican majority in the Senate and the House, we need the same in Canada. And we don't have it today. We have a minority government that has gone beyond the 4-year norm, a minority government that is essentially working on a mandate that is day by day and week by week. And so it is time, and I would ask the Prime Minister and Jagmeet Singh and all those that have a role in propping this government up, it is time to provide Canadians with the opportunity to choose who is going to have the mandate to negotiate with the incoming Trump administration, and it is time for Canadians to have the opportunity to elect who is going to prepare and implement their policy development over the course of the next 4 years.
So today's development was that starting to talk about export taxes on 3 of Saskatchewan's primary exports, uranium, potash, and oil. What are they trying to do to us?
Yeah, there are rumors at this point that the federal government's counter tariffs might look like, rather than an import tariff, would look like an export tariff on the very goods that we are providing here in the West to the U.S., oil, potash, and uranium. And that would be disastrous. I'd say it's a betrayal by the Prime Minister and the federal government of everyone that lives in this province and works in those industries. But more broadly, it's a betrayal by the federal government of Canadians. In saying that, there is a conversation to be had here between Canada and the U.S., and we will be supportive of engaging through our federal government, whoever that might be. We'll also be supportive of engaging as a Council of Federation table alongside other premiers. But we'll also be engaging as a province of Saskatchewan, utilizing the contacts and relationships that we've built over the course of the last number of years within the U.S. and all of those associated with it.
So if any of this happens, how will Saskatchewan cope?
This can't happen. This can't happen, certainly for any length of time. The relationship that we have built, and I'll speak from the Saskatchewan perspective with our American partners, is one where we work together to add value to the products that we produce alongside our American allies and our American friends. And we create an environment where we provide energy security, food security, and I would say to some degree even manufacturing security in North America, continental wide. And then we take those very goods that we produce together and add value together, and we export them to over 160 countries globally. And so this simply can't happen. And we need a federal government that is very serious at, doing what they said they would do, which is to approach this as a Team Canada effort. A Team Canada effort and working alongside one another after we just got off the phone with the Prime Minister and the other premiers yesterday without a whisper of any type of export tariffs of this nature. A Team Canada approach would not be stepping into these export tariffs as a retaliatory measure. And so if that is where the Prime Minister and the federal government head is at, they need to rethink.
What does this have to say about the need to get more pipe to Tidewater? At Lloydminster, Premier Smith spoke about rejuvenating Northern Gateway. Does this need to happen with haste? And what about Energy East?
Yes, but before any of that, Energy East, Northern Gateway, and then there obviously is more discussion, not only in Canada but in the U.S. on the Southern Link. all are important, I would say, in the long term. And despite the short-term tariff discussions that we might be having, all are important in the long term. And we need access to all of the markets. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to have a positive working relationship with our American counterparts. And that should be and needs to be the goal of whoever the Prime Minister is today or tomorrow. So all are important, and we're supportive of all of those initiatives. And I think, and we've had this discussion and likely will again today, I think then in there that provides us some opportunities in this province and in Western Canada to start looking at expanding some of the production of the most sustainable product that you can find on Earth. And that's what we should be having the discussion about, is how do we attract the investment and attract actually, this might be a more serious challenge, attract the operational capacity to expand our drilling footprint and ultimately expand our production in Saskatchewan. We have the product. It's some of the most sustainable and high quality product that you can find on Earth. Unfortunately, we haven't had the will at the federal level, which has allowed us to slip a little bit on some of the operational capacity that we have to expand this industry that's employs so many people in this province.
So I definitely want to get into that in a little bit later here. It doesn't seem to be a coincidence that Premier Smith is going to be in Washington for several days during Inauguration Week. It appears there's a significant chance there may be an announcement on Keystone XL revival. Is this a good thing, or are we locking ourselves even more so into that one market, and with the tariff threat, it may not be necessarily as healthy for us?
Yeah, no, we are, but we're already locked into that market as well in a significant way. I mean, from this province, virtually every barrel is heading into that American market. And so we're, to say we aren't already rather dependent on the relationship with the U.S., whether it's oil, potash, whether it's ag products, or whether it's the imported products that we have as well, Kenworth and Peterbilt trucks, big green combines and tractors.
The ones that can only sell 10% manual transmissions now.
Yeah. Goodness, don't get me started. So that is a relationship that's important to us, and I think it speaks to the importance of having whoever is representing Canada's interests with the incoming Trump administration that has a significant mandate, like the incoming president does. So it's time for an election in this nation, and I would openly say that from Saskatchewan's perspective, we would ask both Jagmeet and Justin to do the right thing and give Canadians the opportunity to choose who is going to be that voice over the next 4 years, and give them a mandate to do it.
So the election saw both parties speak about the importance of maintaining royalties. Basically, it didn't come up except for me asking about it. Is there ever a time for any commodity, being it oil, uranium, potash, lithium, or helium, where a government can reconsider royalties without serious repercussions? And where I'm going with that is that in 2009, the Stelmach government in Alberta talked seriously about a royalty review. Yeah. And I wrote 6 months of stories of what I called refugees from Stelmach.
Yeah, and there's a history in that very accurate article, and I glanced at it not too long ago. Actually, I think we need to be aware in that vein of being aware of what your allies, who are also sometimes your competitors for investment attraction and whatnot, be aware of what they are up to and what they're doing. Also understanding geology in Saskatchewan is slightly different than Alberta, and maybe slightly different than looking to the south and the South Dakota North Dakota and Montana oil fields of which we share. And I think we have often looked to compare ourselves to some of the Alberta regulatory environment and royalty environment. Maybe what we should do is take a page out of Doug Burgum's book, and maybe look a little more closely to the south. And maybe this is an opportunity for us, maybe coinciding with the federal election, to look at how they have went from roughly about the same amount of barrels that we produce in Saskatchewan in North Dakota to something north of 2 billion.
I think it was, they went from 90,000 to 1.2 million in the space of 4 years.
Yeah.
Actually, you're going right on the path where I want to talk about here. When we spoke during the election, and just before we get into that, for those who aren't familiar, Doug Burgum is the governor of North Dakota, and he's going to be Trump's Interior Secretary. Interior
Secretary, as well as he's going to chair the Energy Security Committee.
I actually saw him speak in Bismarck a few years ago, yeah. And he talked about wanting to drive his state to 2 million barrels and using CO2 to do it.
Yeah. And Doug is Doug is a friend of Saskatchewan, someone that I've formed a relationship as neighbors over the last number of years, and I would say he's provided excellent leadership on behalf of and his time as governor of the state of North Dakota. And I expect that he's going to provide a very similar level of quality leadership in the incoming Trump administration.
So when we spoke during the election, I asked about concrete measures to reach the Saskatchewan Party government's stated goal of reaching 600,000 barrels a day. Right now, we're about 454,000 barrels. We've been flat for roughly 20 years, give or take. We had a little bit of a spike for Bakken, but and you said, and I was actually quite astonished, and I've thought about this for 2 months. You said you'd like to see us hit 1 million barrels someday. How serious were you about that?
Still serious. North Dakota did it. And so, and that maybe, brings me to the comments I made earlier is we often look to the West and to ensure, the regulatory environment that we're operating in is, comparable to what's happening in Alberta. And maybe we should be, yes, looking to the West in many cases, but also looking to the south in some of the oil basins that we share with North Dakota and into Montana, and that's something that we haven't really done in the years gone by. Is that 49th parallel, as much as I say it isn't an issue for trade, it has been an issue when it comes to regulatory implementation. Maybe we need to just take the blinders off a little bit of in particular, some of the areas of our oil industry and look at it a little bit differently. And that's what we're asking our Minister of Energy to have a look at as we, enter that different environment with, at some point, an impending federal election.
So based on that conversation we had in October, I started working on what I'm calling a series of stories calling Reaching for 1 Million.
Right.
And
good for you. Keep the heat on us.
That's the idea. And basically, it's going to be asking the smartest people in the industry if it's possible, and if so, what do we need to do to get there? Geology, research, that sort of thing, regulatory. The net result of these is that all these stories, these ideas, we basically wrap them up in a bow, plop them on a minister's desk, and say, "Here, have at her." What are your thoughts?
Good. And I look forward to it as our Minister of Energy. I will look forward to it as well. I do have concerns, and it won't be easy. I see since 2015, since the oil industry, the energy industry in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and I'd say even in Newfoundland, and parts of Manitoba, in fairness, and BC even, has essentially been under a veiled attack from the federal government. Whether that be a regulatory attack, whether it be attack in the name of climate change or whatever that might be, to the point where we've seen federal ministers and the Prime Minister talk about phasing out of the oil sands and phasing out of the oil industry entirely long before anybody could ever reasonably conceive. I worry about the operational ability we actually have to drastically increase, our drilling capacity and our production capacity, as I've seen it leave the province. And I talk to people in, the southern part of our province, and they talk actively about, oil field construction and service assets that are not operating in the province anymore. They're still owned by the same people. They're operating in the northern U.S. and maybe some even in Alberta. And so it's going to, when you have a president-elect that is using phrases like drill, baby, drill, and I see them appointing Doug Burgum to the Energy Security Committee, I would say that the Trump administration is very serious about expanding their energy production footprint, which means we need to be too.
Well, one of the things that you're talking about looking to the West here, and I hate bringing up Premier Smith all the time, but she's been talking almost every week. She's mentioning in speeches she wants to now see Alberta double its production. That would be from 4 million to 8 million. Mm-hmm. And by hitting 1 million, we would effectively be slightly more than double. Mm-hmm. If they have any progress in that at all, we can't really just stand pat, can we?
No. And we need to think different in order to get there. You can't think in traditional terms of tweaking and moving small things around. You need to think much more substantial. In particular, if the challenge is attracting some of the infrastructure back into the province. Now, that comment in Alberta with their oil sands footprint versus how we produce in Saskatchewan, those are two very different conversations, and with a different number of people in each of those conversations. So they're different, but the goals are similar, and I think there's some opportunities for alignment actually, and some of the investment attraction, asset attraction that we could probably align quite nicely on.
Well, we do have 30 billion barrels of heavy oil.
We do.
And, I'm part of this series is going to be talking about maybe we need to look harder at that.
And there is some opportunities in active investment happening, in particular in the the Lloydminster and North Battleford area in that play. And what we really need to do is reinvigorate some of the other areas of the province.
Switching gears here, on nuclear, the Saskatchewan government continues to demonstrate it is clearly intent on going all in on nuclear. I attended a Westinghouse event in November in Saskatoon where they spoke of the possibility of micro reactors, small reactors, and 1,200 megawatt large reactors. Now, I hadn't realized that SaskPower had signed an MOU in summer of 23 with Westinghouse, and it was right around the time you started, hinting about 1,000 megawatt reactors. So kind of clued in. Oh, that's where it came from. Can you provide an update of where we are on all three of these fronts?
Well, I think a couple of things, and it won't be it'll be a little bit vague of an update because I think the priorities as we look ahead and just take this to the very high level of the power we need today versus the power we're going to need in 5, 10, and 15 years. And it's going to increase. We need more. And that's true across the board. And if we continue to attract, investment in the mining industry, and who knows where the data server conversation will go, we're going to need more power tomorrow probably substantially more power tomorrow than we have today. Which means the existing assets we have, we need to look at not only running them out throughout their lifespan, but can we eke and squeak some additional lifespan out of our existing assets, including our coal assets. The focus moving forward is really threefold, and it needs to be in this order. The reliability of our power grid is number one. The affordability of our power grid is number two. And then as we find our way through time, we'll lower the emissions in how we're generating power here in this province. And so it has to be in that order. And if you put the sustainability of the grid first, you're going to sacrifice your reliability and you're going to sacrifice your affordability. And so we need affordable power in order for us to attract the investments that we are. And for the people that live here, we need reliable power if we're going to continue to attract and operate the investments that are using significant amounts of power in this province, whether that be in the energy industry, the mining industry, whether it be in the processing industry, or you as I as residents. And then in last, but certainly not least, as we find our way through the next number of decades, we do need to lower the emissions footprint that we have. Industry is asking for it. People are asking for it, but not at the expense of the reliability and affordability of your grid. So that's a little different and a little more direct than maybe we've been in the last number of years, but it needs to be that way as we build out our capacity.
In May, you came to Estevan and said we're going to keep burning coal until nuclear is ready. That will be well past the 2030 deadline that the federal government has imposed. And actually, that was brought in under the Conservatives, if I recall.
It was either that or a 50-year lifespan.
Yeah, for a 50-year lifespan. How are we going to get around those rules? Are we going to put the maintenance money into our coal plants to keep them going to that point?
Those are questions that are being asked right now. They're a significant asset, and they're an asset that if I go back to reliable, affordable power, our coal assets fit very well in the first two. So,
are you just basically going to tell the feds, sorry, we can't do it, we're not shutting them down?
Well, we'll be dealing with a different federal government by that time. And we're going to, have those conversations with respect to those very metrics that I discussed. We need to ensure we have a reliable power grid. We need to ensure we have an affordable power grid. But it's also a power grid that we're investing in lowering the emissions profile through time. That's what we're going to do. And if the federal government is, feels that Saskatchewan is offside in this space, well, we'll have to have that discussion as well at that point in time. But we're going to do what we're going to do.
So you got a new minister to get hauled off in chains in?
Mm-hmm.
Why did the province feel the need to provide a $100 million loan guarantee to the several First Nations for the Weyburn Wind project, being that their partner is Enbridge, one of the largest companies in Canada.
Yeah.
Why put public dollars at risk?
It's about participating in the economy, and when you look across the province, and this is maybe a higher percentage of that, but when you look across the province, we're about 17% Indigenous, self-identified Indigenous people in the province, and when you look at the investments that are coming into many areas in Saskatchewan, it only stands to reason that they should have an opportunity to invest in the capital assets and in the actual business going on. This particular project, and we were asked by Enbridge, is there an opportunity for this to occur? We had came forward with a number of years ago with the Indigenous Finance Corporation to look at underwriting some of these opportunities, which should be of low, if any, net cost to the government, because they would be loans that are paid back. But providing Indigenous folks as part of our steps in reconciliation to actually actively participate financially in in a minority stake in significant projects in the province. We have another one, not that has been underwritten by the Indigenous Finance Corporation, but has a partnership in an OSB plant in the Prince Albert area as well, that has a number of First Nations communities that are in partnership at the ownership level of that particular plant. This is I think a positive for Saskatchewan, a positive for reconciliation and Indigenous communities and Indigenous people. I think it's also a sign and a function of us just moving forward in that entire conversation.
So, touching on the reconciliation argument, why is there an absolute requirement for Indigenous ownership, at least partial ownership, in any new wind or solar project of grid scale in Saskatchewan?
For that very reason, I don't think there'd be a requirement on the percentage, but there'd be a requirement to include Indigenous, the opportunity for Indigenous folks to invest in that asset that often is in the territory in which they've inhabited since since they've been there. And so, again, these are just steps to really portray the importance of including Indigenous people with that opportunity to invest in these types of projects when companies and investments are being made.
So shifting gears one more time here. On helium, North American helium is getting really close to the 10 processing facilities that is roughly the critical mass needed to start looking at a liquefaction facility, which would be moving up a significant step up the value-added chain. What are your thoughts on that?
Good, and these are conversations that we have been having and continue to have with not just that industry but other industries as well. This is part of the great diversification of the natural resources that we have in Saskatchewan, and whether it be helium or other industries. First is to attract the initial investment, and second is then how do we start to add value to those investments that are coming in, and this is going to, I think, provide us a great opportunity to do just that. We finally see it after essentially centuries in the ag industry, where we're seeing the investment in canola crush and protein fractionation. We're going to see it much sooner in the helium industry. And, as the resource we have in helium specifically is substantial in this province, and I would say the opportunity for Saskatchewan people is equally substantial.
Well, on the helium thing, actually, the image at the top of my webpage, that's not an oil well. Mm-hmm. That's a helium well drilled at Climax. Mm-hmm. You touched on something here, actually. I'd like to kind of riff off a little bit. The goal that your government put out in, I think it was 2019, the plan for 2030. Yeah. Some people might say, a lot of those things were impossible. And on canola crush, my mother is the closest neighbor to the two plants in York.
Oh, yeah.
They're doubling both of them.
Yeah.
And they're building a pea processing facility next year. We've hit the population numbers that were, said to be impossible. And this is why on the oil side, I think we can exceed the 600,000. I think that, people are saying...
You and I are in the minority in this building that think that, but we're there.
Well, it comes down to is that a lot of people say, well, we're never going to get larger. I mean, I'm sure you've, all the historical precedent of that from the previous people in your chair. But we, especially on canola, my mother hears the cranes all day long. We're working on Sundays because they are building that facility like crazy. Do you take a little bit of a feather in your cap saying, hey, we've set some goals, we're actually getting there?
Yeah, what's happening in the canola crush industry, I think, is indicative of what we can do in many industries. And it's not always just producing more. It's adding value to what we're already producing. And nowhere is a better example of Yorkton with Richardson and Dreyfus both doubling their plant capacity there. We have, Cargill building outside of the city of Regina here and still working with what was Viterra, now Bunge, on potentially another site here. But that's indicative of, what potentially can happen in the helium industry. I think there's an age-old discussion in the oil and gas industry as well, both up in the Lloydminster area and that heavy play, as well as down in the southeast. But we have I think in that particular industry, a more urgent conversation around actually where our production is and where it should and could and would be in the future. But it's about value, and think the wealth of Saskatchewan communities, the province as a whole, the communities, industries, and people in this province comes down to one very simple measurement for me. It's our export value. And in 2007, the export value in this province was $17 billion. This last 2 years running, it's been between $49 and $50 billion. That's a substantial increase in the dollars that are rotating through the economies in our various communities and our province more broadly. Export value is everything. Not export volume, but export value is everything. And the opportunity in the helium industry is only going to add value to that $49 billion, which is climbing.
When we start doing liquefaction, that should add a zero or so, I think.
It's just more.
In regards to new industries here, and we've been talking a lot about lithium in recent years, but
it's bubbling along under the surface.
Oh, it is. I put together a year-end video for Arizona Lithium showing how far they've gone, and they're talking about by this time next year they want to be in first commercial production. So last summer saw 3 lithium companies punching several wells in southeast Saskatchewan. Arizona Lithium, as I said, they're moving towards commercialization next year. EMP Metals is not far behind, and they drilled a couple wells out near Stoughton. There's another company that prefers to stay private that is also drilling near Stoughton. What does this burgeoning new business mean for Saskatchewan, and how will recent changes to the critical mineral policy help this commercialization become reality?
Well, there's more conversations to have in the space of lithium production, but certainly, the need and the demand is there, and I can't be more pleased to see, as how quickly it's coming along, and probably even quicker than I expected, which is a great thing. So there's some more conversation that we need to is happening and continue to happen to ensure that the government certainly isn't putting up any barriers to the expansion of the industry and what currently is happening. But it's certain, by the contrast, or contrary to that, is actually supporting continued investment into the industry, supporting the workforce that they have. Whether it be helium or lithium or a number of other industries. Can't we be thankful for the oil industry that we have? None of them would be there without it.
Well, I mean, you can't drill for lithium without a drilling rig.
Exactly. And, I would say we're very excited about, what's happening in the rare earth space and expanding some of the mined products that we're looking at, what's happening in the lithium space and the helium space. But I just say to all the, the oilmen of today and yesterday, none of that happens without the expertise that you bring and have honed over the years. And so, thank you to the energy industry for what they continue to do in producing some of the most sustainable, some of the most valuable energy products on earth. But thank you also for what they've brought in the way of innovation and technology that is allowing us now to actually expand into these other industries. Saskatchewan people and more generally our economy and our province owes them a debt of gratitude.
Is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
I'd like to hear the current Prime Minister mirror my debt of gratitude speech to our oil industry and to actually support, the way that we're creating wealth here in Saskatchewan. And I say that tongue in cheek. What I would like to add, in addition to, saying thank you to all of those in the energy industry, but all of those, across the province of Saskatchewan, your listeners and your readers, is to say, thank you for supporting us in this most recent election in a fifth term Saskatchewan Party government in the province. Really, quite unprecedented in Saskatchewan or across Canada. But more important than that, I take the opportunity to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Merry Christmas to your family, and wishing everyone the very best in the new year.
Thank you very much. I did want to mention, I don't know if you heard or not, but I'm going to be doing a podcast with Bronwyn Eyre here starting in the new year.
Oh, good.
Yeah. The Pipeline Online, Grime Sales and Service podcasts. Where
Yeah.
we talk. The first one's going to be about royalties, so it's going to be interesting.
Oh.
I might use a clip of this to intro it.
I remember when she dug her teeth into being energy minister, and how valuable that experience was when she became the Minister of Justice. Like her, because I remember talking to her, and she didn't have a lot of, knowledge or experience in the energy industry or the mining industry when she went in to be energy and resource minister. But when she came out a year or two later, she sure as hell did. And then came to be the Minister of Justice with all of that knowledge that she had acquired as serving as the minister, and all those connections. And you look at the necessary conversations that she had to have as Minister of Justice with the federal government. We were so very fortunate to have her in both of those files.
So I'm hoping that her Rolodex and my Rolodex get some pretty good interviews. Maybe we'll have to get you on.
Yeah,